Howdy, welcome to CompSci.rocks. In this video, we're continuing our series on the CodingBat AP1 set of problems, this time the scores100 problem. If you haven't seen the problem before, the link's in the show notes below. Let's start by looking at the problem description. Given an array of integers called scores, return true if there are scores of 100 next to each other in the array. If not, return false. And the array will always have at least two elements, which makes sense because we can't really look for neighbors if there's only one thing in the array. And here's the code we're starting with. We need to return true or false, and our array contains integers and is called scores. But for now, let's step away from the code for a bit and walk through the process to solve this problem. To do that, we need an array with some numbers. We're going to go with a relatively small array with only 5 elements. Now, you're smart enough to look at this list of numbers and can almost immediately tell there aren't any hundreds next to each other. But, and this is something I end up saying a lot in these videos, you're much smarter than your computer. Your brain went through a process to determine if there are any adjacent hundreds in the list, but it happened so fast you probably didn't even realize what had happened. Your computer isn't that smart, so we've got to go through the steps to figure this out. What we're going to do is go through the entire array looking at neighboring values, starting with the 25 and 100 in indexes 0 and 1. There is 100 in this pair, but the problem stated we're only looking for hundreds that are next to each other, so we're going to keep going. Same with this pair. They're not both 100, and we move on. Same here with 50 and 100. And one more repeat with the unmatched 125. And now we've gone through all the numbers and never found adjacent 100s. At this point, we can say that there isn't anywhere in our array where there are two consecutive 100s, but we had to go through the entire array to make that determination. One other thing to notice here. We're comparing each value to the next value, except the last 25, because there isn't a next value. That's going to be important in just a bit when we get to code. So let's swap a couple values so there are two adjacent hundreds and see how that changes things. Like last time, we're going to go through and compare neighbors, and just like last time, the 25 and 100 aren't a match, so we keep going. But now we found two adjacent 100s. And this changes a couple things. We haven't gone through the entire array, but we can go ahead and stop here and answer that yes, there are adjacent 100s in the array. No reason to continue, we found a pair, so it doesn't matter what comes next. It won't change. And now it's time for the code. So let's go back to the starting code we saw earlier. First step is to loop through the array, looking at values, but notice that we're stopping one early. I will never get to the last element in scores. And that's important here because we're comparing the values at index I and I plus 1. If we went all the way to the end, then I plus 1 would be out of bounds, so we stop early. And here we're looking at two values and checking if they're both 100. If they are both 100, we can go ahead and return true, which will end the method. Same thing happened the second time we went through the array earlier when we found adjacent 100s. We didn't go through the entire array. But if we don't ever find hundreds next to each other and finish the loop, we need to go ahead and return false. And just like earlier, we can say that yes, we can stop as soon as we find two hundreds next to each other, but have to go through the entire array before we can say there aren't any neighboring 100s. And with that, we're at the end of the video. Thanks for stopping by, and we'll see you next time.